right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it's week number 3. It's that time we're going to start finding out who the real contenders are and who are the pretenders. But the man who wasn't pretending when he placed 4th in the all-you-can-eat shrimp contest at the Vero Beach Seafood Festival, my co-host, Fresh. Fresh, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I could eat seafood for days, shrimp especially. So it's the reason why I finished fourth. Still have anger over that one. Doing well, Haps. This is a big week, week 3, separation week for a lot of teams, and hopefully, your favorite team is paying attention to what all the chaos that happened last week and shows up on Saturday.
Yeah, there's a bunch of great games in here and a bunch of sneaky good games too. We're going to find out a lot about some teams that are kind of in that edge range. Are they going to be the next team that is going to jump up and really contend for a playoff spot? Is it a team that we're going to be talking about for the rest of the year? But something that happened this week that we've been talking about for over a year now is the firing of Scott Frost. Fresh, let's start right there. Buyout what is $15 million by firing him now. Nebraska decides that they're not going to wait till October 1st to where the buyout cut in half down to $7.5 million. They felt like they had to make that move right now. What were your thoughts on that?
The program has been struggling for a long time. The last time this team had a win versus an FBS team was October 1st of 2021 when they beat Northwestern. We're basically on a calendar year. You struggled this year in the opener versus Northwestern. You lost. You barely beat North Dakota in your home opener. You had to actually come back. You were losing at one point. And then Georgia Southern rolls into town, who might have been one of the 5 worst programs in the country last year, brings in Clay Helton in his second game in charge, and they hang with you and they beat you. On paper, you should have been 3-0 heading into this Oklahoma game upcoming weekend, and this entire team has been a shambles. There's been really almost no positive traction on either side of the football during his regime, and it had to happen. It was only gonna what would have been the benefit of keeping another week and him losing to Oklahoma. It wouldn't have mattered at that point. You've already hit the bottom of the barrel and it can't get any worse.
Who do you have taking over for this position? I know we've thrown out a variety of different names, or I've thrown out a couple of different names. I think my number one choice would be Matt Campbell from Iowa State. I think he understands Midwest. I think he is born from Ohio, so he has roots that are tied within the Big Ten. I think that Matt Campbell makes the most amount of sense to me, but does he leave Iowa State? And that's really the question. Does he go from being a big fish and in a few years, maybe the top coach or top 2 coaches in the Big 12? Does he make that jump over into the Big Ten that's only becoming a bigger pond and will grow even more? And he's sitting there as maybe the 6th or 7th best coach in the Big Ten.
And I think Matt Campbell's probably one of the 4 or 5 names that probably be out there. And I know you wrote about him in your article a couple weeks ago, after the Northwestern loss. I think he's the best fit because the Big 12 is dying. I don't really care what anyone says. Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, and BYU are not keeping that league alive with Texas and Oklahoma leaving. The Big Ten and SEC are going to drive the conversation, and if you really want to make that next jump, Nebraska is the best opportunity for Iowa State. They're going to have better facilities. The focus is football 100%, and it's a little easier to sell. Obviously, it's not the Tom Osborne Nebraska days where you were winning national championships and running the option and dominating that way. It's a completely different landscape. But if you want the next challenge, the only way he's going to build up is getting that Big Ten money, the Big Ten TV deals, and the Big Ten landscape. There, moving to Nebraska if he so choose. Obviously, I don't think any of those coaches that are even rumored would make a move until the end of the season. So you're gonna have nothing. Mickey Joseph will handle the interim duties all season long, and then come after Thanksgiving, December time, they'll make that decision. Another interesting name, I brought it up on Twitter was Coach Stoops there at Kentucky. Like if there was any friction in Kentucky and he felt undervalued or wasn't getting what he wanted, if Nebraska came calling, would he even listen to that deal? He's also Youngstown guy. He's been around. Fantastic coach. I think Florida State kind of messed up by not going after him anyway a couple of years ago. Would he even make that jump to Nebraska and have a better chance of potentially even winning? I think Kentucky's he's great there, but you never know. Don't want to rule it out. You never know how big money's going to roll. People start talking.
Yeah, my favorite for the job after Matt Campbell is Bill O'Brien, and I'm a big Bill O'Brien fan. The reason why I'm a big Bill O'Brien fan is because of he doesn't get enough credit for the job he did at Penn State. And I've said this many of times. Penn State is basically got the death penalty without it being the death penalty. We haven't seen in our school since SMU get the death penalty, and Penn State after the Sandusky scandal came as close as you possibly can to getting it. Bill O'Brien stepped in there. He won. He was very successful and was able to recruit at a high level without having the promise of a bowl game, without having a promise of any real type of future for these kids. And that really stood the test to me about why he's a good coach. I don't care what happens in the NFL. Nick Saban lasted 2 years as the Miami Dolphins head coach and really wasn't that great in Miami. Jimmy Johnson won some Super Bowls. He's really the only great college coach that made the transition over to pros. I guess you could kind of say Pete Carroll as well, but I always feel like Pete Carroll's more of an NFL coach than he is a college coach. I think he took a pit stop in the college ranks. I feel that way about Bill O'Brien. I feel like Bill O'Brien would be a very, very good college coach. I feel like his message wears thin over the time with pro players because they'll be there for more than 2, 3, 4 years. But in the college level, his message rings true, and I think he'd be very successful in a place like Nebraska. I think he's exactly what Nebraska needs. I think he's tough. He holds people accountable. I think he knows how to recruit. He has that NFL background that he can build on. I like Bill O'Brien. If I was Nebraska, I'm going to go and call Alabama and say, listen, I want to talk to Bill O'Brien as soon as I possibly can. What's the price tag? What's the price tag to come here? And I think that Nebraska's got the boosters that will write that check. But the problem is, does Bill O'Brien want to go to Nebraska? And I think that a lot of NFL teams, when an NFL team has a head coach vacancy this year, I think he's going to be on the short list in the NFL. Is his desire to go back into the NFL, or is it his desire to stay in the college ranks? I don't know. I'm not privy to that information. But if it was me and I was Nebraska's AD leading the search, he would be the top name on my list, with Matt Campbell being a very, very close second. I would also say Luke Fickell, but I don't think Fickell leaves Cincinnati.
No, you don't leave Cincinnati for Nebraska, especially when you've built a successful winning program. The standard's basically the same. You've won a championship. You've been to the playoff. Bill O'Brien's a great call. Him learning, I think, revitalizing his career to Nick Saban. Game Day did a story on it last week because you had Stark coaching and Butch Jones and all Mike Loxley and all the guys that came through there and had tough times, fell down. Lane Kiffin's another one where he came in, talked to Saban. Saban kind of reset them. They got to see other things were done. Some of them started at the very bottom and then worked themselves back up, into the coaching inner circle, if you will, and then had the Saban stamp of approval, and then were put back out there and sort of had that confidence boost. They weren't bad coaches. They didn't forget how to play football and coach football. Sometimes, you can only coach so much and the players on the field, make or break your career, which is also the tough part. It's the reason why some of the guys get paid so much. Bill O'Brien, I think, what he did at Penn State would be very intriguing for Nebraska because you have to redo the entire culture of that franchise, of the entire program, and bring it back to match historical standards and can move forward and succeed.
So, Fresh, let's jump into the games this week here. First game we're going to talk about, we let off talking about Scott Frost and the Nebraska job. Let's go to Oklahoma and Nebraska. I know this game is an old rivalry game out of the Big 12. I know you took a deep dive into this game. What are your thoughts going into it?
Well, first off, Nebraska's been 1-5 in their last 6 games. We all know, well documented, all the troubles and the losses they've had in one-score games. I guess just not being able to finish is a core problem they've currently had right now. I already mentioned the last time they had that victory was Northwestern almost a year ago at this point. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe that Nebraska has not beat a top-tier program in a calendar year. Oklahoma won this game last year 23-16. Nebraska actually played really, really well. They fought pretty hard. Just the ball didn't bounce their way. There was a crazy interception in it as well. They just couldn't find that one score game of finding a way to push through and get a victory. Interesting tidbit, though. Nebraska interim head coach Mickey Joseph taking over. Former Nebraska player, 88 through 91. He's the first African-American head coach at Nebraska any ever. So a lot of standard there being set from that perspective. Another interesting fact about him, the reason he was brought to Nebraska this past year, he's coached around, been at Grambling, Alcorn State. Most recently, 2017 through 2021, he was at LSU, the wide receivers coach. He recruited and developed Justin Jefferson, recruited and developed Jamar Chase, and the rest of those guys. He was the dude who pushed those two guys with Joe Burrow to be successful. So he has that coaching pedigree. He has the ability to recruit, has the ability to attract. He's also a name that's actually been floated out there. Does he actually have the rest of the season to coach through and if they turn around, become the guy? So keep him on the radar because there's a lot of pedigree there, and he hasn't actually done it just off the cuff. The first thing I really looked at when diving into this game itself was on paper, stats can be really misleading, confusing. So far, Oklahoma's averaging 39 points a game on offense. Nebraska, through 3 games, averaging 36. Both these teams are scoring at will. Oklahoma, though, is giving up 8. Nebraska's giving up 31. What really started diving into the stats was total yards. Oklahoma was averaging 461 yards total offense a game. Nebraska's averaging 492. Defensively, Oklahoma's giving up 385 a game. Nebraska's given up 492 yards of total offense. Their defense is giving us as many yards as their offense. They're basically giving us mad points. They just can't find a break. But it's just really weird how almost the yards are almost identical in the points per game. Both these teams are going to score, but Oklahoma's defense has proven that they can stop people. When you're looking at, it's not like they're playing much more of a high-tiered team compared to what Nebraska's played. They've played UTEP and they've played Kent State. Nebraska's played North Dakota, Northwestern, and Georgia Southern. So the similarities of programs are that far-fetched and not that far different. They're basically the same kind of core. On the other side of the ball, though, coming into this is also Brent Venables' first road game as a head coach at Oklahoma. So what kind of, you're leaving the friendly confines of Norman. What are you going to bring? He's going to bring his defense. He knows he has a program in turn one, but he also has a hungry program that actually might be unpredictable and a little aggressive because you have gone through this coaching change and there's a lot of pride that maybe is still there in that locker room for Nebraska. So he has to make sure he guards his Sooner program against getting cocky, against getting overconfident, making subtle mistakes, giving Nebraska an inch that might lead to a mile. You've got to keep them focused and guided. And that starts with Dylan Gabriel, the quarterback. 5 touchdowns so far in the season. Really hasn't had adversity. Oklahoma hasn't turned the ball over all year in the first 2 games. They're +3 in the turnover margin. You haven't had the adversity of being on the road, haven't had the adversity of a turnover. How do you keep that mentality going? Defensively, you're going to have pressure moments where that Nebraska offense is somehow they're going to pull some crazy things. You're going to have to be able to match that and shut it down on the road to get this victory. Because like you saw last week, just because there's no number next to them, just because the record is not 500, doesn't mean this team cannot show up on one day and for that one day play it at a higher level than normal. So you got to be aware of that. Marvin Mims has been the focal point. He has 31% of all the receptions for the Oklahoma offense. So literally 1 of every 3 catches is going to him. He is the offense. 244 yards and 2 touchdowns along those 10 catches. So Nebraska, somehow, if you find a way to somehow play defense, you need to find a way to match up with him and shut him down. Try to take him away. Do not do what the Packers did against Justin Jefferson this past weekend. Make sure you take the best receiver away and give yourself a chance to win. Looking at Nebraska's offense, Casey Thompson, you were supposed to come in here and light this thing up. You've had 5 touchdown passes and 4 picks, and you've also run for 4 touchdowns. You've somehow scored, but the turnovers cannot, especially against the teams that you've played, the turnovers should not be there. You have to play at a higher level. The last time you played Oklahoma, you were at quarterback at Texas, and you actually should have won that ball game. You had a huge, first half. You were tearing it up. Can you bring that same Casey Thompson into this football game and really use your legs and your arm and play a little more freer and try to get after the Oklahoma defense? That's what's going to help give you this chance to get a victory. You need to play more free, more open, but use your abilities. Anthony Grant, you have actually been very successful as well, and you're going to have to be very involved on Saturday. You have run 428 yards and 5 touchdowns so far in the three games. You have a 6.2 yards per carry. You need to maintain that ground game and maintain that time possession. You cannot keep giving the ball over and letting Oklahoma chew up the clock and put points on the board. You've got to be able to hold the football, run the rock, run with purpose, and score touchdowns. In the Blackshirt defense, if you even want to pull off this upset, you should be very upset at this point Your head coach has been fired. You're being laughed at. You just got beat by Georgia Southern. You need to get after it. You have 2 sacks in 3 games. You have 2 interceptions and 2 forced fumbles. You need to force more turnovers. Get after the quarterback more. You need to be more sound and more aggressive, and you need to wrap up at the point of contact. You've given up 31 in Northwestern, 17 in North Dakota, and then 45 this past weekend. That's unacceptable. I mean, the Blackshirt defense is a proud tradition that's been there, and it has not resembled itself in almost 15 years. You have got to be able to somehow change that and make plays on Saturday to get off the field. In the end, I think Oklahoma is obviously the better football team. I think Nebraska will play with fire in the first half. They will come with energy, but that will fade eventually over time. Brett Venables and that Sooner team will put it on them. They will cover the spread, and I have them winning 27-14.
Yeah, I like Oklahoma in the points on this one. I know it's 11.5 on the road, and sometimes a big road favorite like that is dangerous to take. But I think that Nebraska is too much into their feelings right now. I think that if they had this weekend off and we're playing Oklahoma next weekend, I think we'd see a different game. But you just lost your head coach. The emotions are running high. Yeah, you're going to come out and play with a little bit of fire, but you're going to get punched in the mouth pretty quickly by this Oklahoma team. I'm very impressed with Dylan Gabriel. We were talking about this early on. We kind of just wanted to see what that transition would be like from UCF over to Oklahoma. I've been impressed. I'm really impressed by Marvin Mims. Great wide receiver over there too. But that Venables bringing that defense over to Oklahoma, impressive by him. I didn't think it would be that quick of a turnaround for the Oklahoma defense. I thought they would be good. I just didn't think they would be this good that quickly.
Well, this is going to be the best offense in theory they're going to be playing so far this season. But they have played much better in really shutting down. They haven't given any hope to Kent State or UTEP.
All right, Fresh. So I'm sticking down south this time, and I'm going to one of the most marquee games of this weekend, and that's the Penn State Nittany Lions traveling down to Auburn to face the Tigers and War Eagle. Big Ten versus SEC. The argument continues here, ladies and gentlemen. This game to me there's one name that I'm really excited to talk about, and that is Nicholas Singleton, the freshman running back out of Penn State. Went off, had a monster game last weekend. We talked about him in our recap game, but in that game, playing a MAC school. Now he's where the big boys play. He's playing Auburn. Auburn is only allowing 64 yards rushing on the season right now, but they've played Mercer and I have the other team here real quick, is I believe UTEP as well. That's not a very good rush offense to face right there. This is a kid that has that breakaway speed. This is a kid that can really pound the rock with them. Now, is James Franklin going to give 25 carries to a freshman running back? That's a really good question because he only got 10 carries last week. Are we going to see an influx of carries by Nicholas Singleton, or is he going to still kind of be easing him in there? I think if Penn State really wants a chance to win this game and win this game going away, because the spread right now is only 3, and Penn State's the favorite right there. You need to really pound the workhorse back. We've seen freshman running back come into college football and make a lot of noise, and he could possibly be the next great Penn State running back. You take a look at the quarterback situation. Sean Clifford had probably one of his best games as a starter at Penn State last year against Auburn. Remarkable game, led the drive, won the game late at night. That was a phenomenal game to watch. Right now on the season, he has 495 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Penn State is scoring 40 points a game right now, and they're allowing about 20. Now, again, you can say talent, what have you, but the thing that really jumped out at me is that 20 points a game is you went up against a fairly good offense in Purdue and played Purdue tough. Purdue, a lot of people who don't watch that team over there or don't follow Big Ten football that much, Purdue isn't the bottom feeder that they once were. That's a very good offense run by Aiden O'Connell. I know that they've lost a little bit, like David Bell going to the league, but that's still a pretty good offense run by Brom over there as well. Auburn, on the other hand, is Auburn. They play great defense. They're only allowing 300 yards of total offense right now. You look at them, they are giving up a little more offense through the air, but you think about this, the two teams that they've played have gotten really far behind early in those games. What do you have to do when you're behind? You have to throw the ball a whole lot more. For Auburn to do this, they have to keep this game very, very close. Auburn must stop the run. So as much as I'm sitting here talking about Singleton, they need to stop the run. They need to load the box up, and they need to make Sean Clifford beat you. I would make Sean Clifford beat me more than I'd make Singleton beat me. I'm more scared about him. You look at this as well. Make sure you put Sean Clifford in long situations. So Auburn's had a little bit of a hard time getting the ball getting to the quarterback a little bit. They need to get more tackles for a loss. They need to get Penn State behind the sticks, make them having second and long, third and long, making those situations very tough for Sean Clifford and taking out the running game as well. If they do that, then when they get the ball back on offense, they need to take better care of the ball. TJ Finley has replaced Bo Nix. A lot of Auburn fans feel a certain way about that, but he hasn't been very good so far. 3 interceptions to 1 touchdown. And Penn State can take away the football. They can. But they are going to need to get that same level of pressure as well. Auburn, you haven't had a single sack by your defensive line. That needs to change. You're -4 in the turnover game. That needs to change. That's what Auburn's going to need to do. Right now, I'm sitting here, and the Auburn Tigers, are they a real tiger or are they a paper tiger? Have they feasted on really a lot less competition there? I don't know. I really don't know. This 3 number makes me feel like this game's going to be close. I don't think it's easy to go into Auburn and win. It's a tough, tough environment, and you know that the fans are going to show up for this game. In the end, I'm going to say this. I'm jumping on the Nicholas Singleton bandwagon. I am pumping this kid up because I'm impressed. I watched some clips of his last game. I'm watching some of those runs there. This kid is going to be a force. He reminds me a little bit like when we started seeing Braylon Allen from Wisconsin come on the scene last year. That's who I started to remember watching him going, man, that's a pretty good back over there in Wisconsin, and still a really good back over there in Wisconsin. I'm going to say Penn State wins this game 27-21. Late game drive, heroics. They're going to finally put the game away at the end. And I'm going to say TJ Finley throws an interception to seal the game for Penn State.
Well, first off, weird things do happen last year. Somehow, Burn, Jordan, they all get just a whole little weird vibe that happens every once in a while. Y'all seen Kick Six and prayer and all the fun stuff that happens, and that's the one element you can't count out. But in reality, Auburn's one of the 3 worst teams in the SEC. They've had drama all in the offseason. They are very dysfunctional. Their recruiting is down. I don't think Brian Harsin is the right coach. It's this might be the make it or break it moment for the Brian Harsin experience, and that's what we're going to call it. There in Auburn, there was already people wanting him out early, and if you get routed pretty handily, it can only get ugly from there and be like very similar to an Ed Orgeron experience after they won the national title. Where I'm not saying Auburn won the title, but after that, where one loss turned into 10 and it just spiraled out of control. Tank Bigsby though and Hunter, the 2 running backs for Auburn, are the strength, and they're gonna have to be called upon early and often and run with purpose and score touchdowns to give Auburn a chance. But in the end, I really think Penn State puts a beat down. I think Clifford has a good game, and they win this one going away, and it's not really close.
All right, Fresh. Let's go to our game, our fan voted game of the week. It is LSU traveling to Mississippi State. Sneaky good game on this one. So, Fresh, talk to me a little bit about LSU versus Mississippi State.
Well, it's actually Mississippi State's traveling to Baton Rouge. So LSU hosting big game. We're going to find out a lot about the Tigers, and we're going to find a lot about the Dogs here. Um, lost to, as everyone knows, well documented, LSU lost the opener in New Orleans. Brian Kelly's first game to Florida State. This past week they hosted Southern, another team from FCS program right there from Baton Rouge. Put almost 70 on them. So all the stats they really have are very inflated. Whatever happened this past week, I am gonna basically throw out because it doesn't really show what this program actually is bought into Brian Kelly, if they've evolved, the players are actually playing. Only thing that really sticks in my mind is what happened in that Florida State game. And so this is going to be that big parameter of where they have actually gone these past 2 weeks. Do they have a foundation? The team is a team buying in. On the other side, Mike Leach, Mississippi State, year 3. What are where's this program at? You've beat Memphis. You got revenge for the loss last year, and you went out to Arizona and you beat the Wildcats. You've scored a lot of points. Your defense has played okay. But really, where are you ready to be one of the elite teams, one of the good teams in the country, or good teams in the SEC? Or are you just going to be, that mid-range school, 6-6, 7-5? This is a chance for you. I think on paper, you have a better roster at this point than LSU does, and you have a better structure of a team. Now you have to prove it on the field. The last time Mississippi State went to Baton Rouge in 2020, it was the opener. Mike Leach's first game as a head coach there after coming from Washington State. They went out and they upset the defending national champion Tigers by 10 points. And it really sent shockwaves through the program, shockwaves through the SEC, and it kind of started the unraveling of Coach O's experience there. This time they're rolling with a much better quarterback. Will Rogers coming in. So far, he's thrown for 763 yards, 9 touchdowns in 2 games. 9 touchdowns in 2 games. They're going to chuck it, and then chuck it some more. They're not going to run the football. They refuse to run. They're going to throw it out and air it out. They're going to really test LSU pass rush and LSU secondary, which, again, we really don't know what we're going to get. There's going to be tons of athletes from LSU. Can they play as a cohesive unit? We thought that they had better players, and UCLA got after them the opener last year. So can these guys actually come together and play in a sound scheme and shut down an opponent? Mississippi State, can you actually put points on the board and win a game in a hostile environment? It is a 6 o'clock Eastern kickoff, so 5 o'clock. Not technically nighttime in Death Valley. That crowd will be liquored up and ready to go and a little energized for a big upset win. You coming in as a favorite is also kind of weird. Usually LSU's a favorite, Mississippi State comes in. You now have the target on your back. Can you play with a full mentality and drive it home and get the win? Brian Kelly, do you have this team ready to go? Do you have this team organized? Is Jaden Daniels the quarterback? Kayshon Boutte's the number 1 receiver, but Jaden Daniels, is he still really the answer? Like, I watched him play in the first game of Florida State. The only time he really showed a spark was in the up-tempo there at the end. Again, the Southern game, he made some throws, but the guys, they should be making those throws. What kind of Jaden Daniels are we going to see this week running that offense and guiding that program? Can they actually focus on Kayshon Boutte? Because the last time they had a big game, Boutte was non-existent. If they actually threw him the football versus Florida State, it might have been a different final score. They have to get him the ball early and often and keep driving that home. Where's his offensive philosophy? This is probably going to be the staple for recruiting and for Brian Kelly's existence at LSU. Do you come into this football game with a purpose and get it done? If you get beat here and you're 1-2 and your only wins over Southern, the heat's going to be ramped up even more. I mean, we had the reporter basically call him out when that reporter showed up late, and he called the reporter out. It's like, hey, be on time. It's like, I'll show up on time when you win. This is the kind of game they were talking about. If you win this game, they'll start showing up on time and respecting you. If you lose this, you're 0-1 in the league. You basically, 0-2 against FBS opponents. Your program starts looking a little bleak at that point. This is a chance for you to really set the tone for LSU football and make your statement on the program. But Mike Leach, if you want to be a contender and get your Bulldogs in the race, this is your one chance to really supplant it, because it's only going to get tougher with Arkansas, A&M, Alabama, and Ole Miss, etc., coming down, and Georgia coming down the stretch. You've got to get your first league win here and set the tone to keep building off of going forward. I really, really kind of deep down want to take LSU with the mystique of Baton Rouge and Death Valley, but I'm going to go on a limb and say Mississippi State 34, LSU 31. Bulldogs get a big win, and Brian Kelly gets a lot of heat.
So, Fresh, when I looked at this game, my favorite thing was that Mississippi State's quarterback is named Will Rogers. And Will Rogers, the fantastic cowboy, had a great quote. And the quote was, "There are 3 kinds of men: the ones that learn by reading, the few who learn by observation, and then the rest of them have to pee on the electric fence for themselves." I think that this is Brian Kelly, and this sums him up. Some of them, you look at what he was doing up there in Notre Dame, look at what he did elsewhere, and then he goes into the SEC. And he has to learn by peeing on the electric fence of what it's going to take to win down here, especially in games against Mississippi State. Mississippi State's a great offense, and the Pirate over there has them really clicking on all cylinders. I feel bad. I don't want to bet against him either. And that's the kind of the weirdest thing. Like, I started thinking about this game more and more, and I go, everything tells us that we should probably be taking LSU in this game. Like, all of the athletes there's more athletes on LSU. There's more, I guess, just more mystique with Death Valley and the location being played. But Vegas has Mississippi State as a 2.5-point favorite. I'm going with the Pirate on this, man. I think that Mississippi State pulls the upset. A lot of people are shaking their head. And at the end of the day, if you look at this and you look at who is really the better coach, is Brian Kelly the better coach, or is Mike Leach? Mike Leach has his flaws. Don't get me wrong on that. But that doesn't mean he's not a really, really good football coach. I think he's going to have the kids ready to go. And I think they're going to play really, really well in Death Valley. I got the Bulldogs winning by 4 in this game.
Yeah, basically, that's one. It's actually just sort of like starting off the slate of how many amazing nighttime kickoffs we have. Clock kick. From there, you get a bunch of sevens and then a couple tens. Like, take a rest period there. Maybe, use the Penn State Auburn game to sort of settle in for the day, take a rest, take a nap, maybe at halftime. The night games are really going to need to be awake for, and that's going to be the first one to kick it off.
Don't start drinking at noon for this week, guys, because we're going Pac-12 after dark. First Pac-12 after dark game of the season. USC versus Fresno State. Fresno State traveling to LA. Everyone on paper is going to be kind of looking at us going, well, why are you guys choosing this game? Folks, I'm going to tell you right now. Fresno State has the best quarterback you haven't heard of. His name is Jake Haener. We've been talking about Jake Haener for over a year. One of the best games we saw last year in all of college football, and this is the reason why you guys listen to this podcast, because we find these nuggets for you. We find things about this. Fresno State versus Nevada last year. Carson Strong versus Jake Haener. Amazing game out there. Fresno State wound up winning that at the very, very end. This is going to have 2 solid quarterback plays. Caleb Williams for USC, Jake Haener for Fresno State. Haener right now has 737 yards, 3 touchdowns to go right now with no interceptions. Caleb Williams, 590 yards and 6 touchdowns. Now, let's talk USC first and foremost here. 53.5 points a game. They've played Rice and they've played Stanford. I understand these aren't like world beaters out there, but averaging 53.5 points a game, people laughed at me over the summer. I put out there once on Twitter that I thought that USC would try to average 40 to 45 points a game. And sure enough, look at this offense right now. Jordan Addison was the best wide receiver in all of college football. Not Chris Olave, not Garrett Wilson, not Jameson Williams out there in Alabama, not Menchie. It was Jordan Addison at Pitt. He has picked up right where he left off. 12 catches, 226 yards, and 4 touchdowns already. This offense is going to be humming along very, very quickly. And here's the thing. Fresno State, they don't have the world's greatest defense, okay? They're allowing 357 yards per game. 215 of that is coming through the air, but they do give up quite a bit on the ground. Now, the reason why we like this game, though, isn't because we think USC is just going to put the boots to Fresno State. This is only a 12-point game by USC. I was kind of shocked. I expected this to be a double-digit favorite game. We think back, we look at some of the games we saw earlier this season. We saw Alabama being a 20-point favorite over Texas. We saw Ohio State 17-point favorite, Georgia 17-point favorite. We've seen a lot of these really big spreads, and then all of a sudden USC is hosting Fresno, and it's only a 12-point game. That puts a lot of respect on the offense that Fresno State has. They have two good wide receivers, Nico Rimingo and Jalen Cropper. Both of them are very tough matchups. Now, I know USC has had a very good defense so far. 9 sacks, 6 interceptions, 2 fumble recovers. They're a tough defense on this, but those two, they haven't matched up 2 wide receivers like this. I'm looking at this saying Fresno State, they got the offense to really hang with USC. In the end, eventually talent's going to win out. But this is going to be an entertaining as hell game starting at 10:30. Now, this is one of those games, folks, if you are not on the West Coast and listening to us, if you are an East Coast listener, you throw this game out at 10:30, you make it as long as you can, and you will be entertained. You will learn all about Jake Haener, especially come draft time. Be very, very aware of this kid's name come draft time next year. I think he's going to be a first or second round pick if people can get over the fact that he plays over at Fresno. In the end, I think USC is a little bit better on defense. Solomon Byrd, the defensive lineman for USC, is going to get a big sack when it matters the most. He's going to get to Haener because one of the things that Fresno State had a problem with last year was protecting Haener sometimes. He did take a few sacks when he shouldn't have. USC has better athletes, and the athletes will win out right around the third quarter. I will tell you this. If Fresno State upsets USC, do not be shocked. The over-under for this game is 73.5. Fresh, that's a high number. And I'm taking the over.
This is going to be offense galore. This is going to be the best offense. I know this is the best team that USC's played all year up to this point. I don't think Stanford is totally worth their salt at this point. There's still a rebuilding program, and Rice isn't there. Fresno State, Jeff Tedford. I mean, this team has been a multiple people, including ourselves, have picked them to win the Mountain West. And this offense is high rolling. They were high rolling last year. Haener actually put himself in the transfer portal for a day and had his pick of the schools he wanted to go to. But then when he found Jeff Tedford was named the head coach, he wanted to continue to learn under Tedford to get him back in there and on the tutelage. So he decided to come back, and him and Jeff Tedford developed Aaron Rodgers among many other quarterbacks. This is a chance for him to really get ready, and you have a showcase, you have a big opponent. It's an opportunity to really, it's rare for a team like this to put up there and get it done and really try to shock somebody. USC, they have been well-oiled machine on offense. Defensively, they have a bunch of pick sixes, so they still get up some points. I think they'll be okay, but this is going to be a real challenge to that defensive staff. Alec Indrish from Oklahoma. A lot of Oklahoma fans and followers of our podcast very critical of him in his time when he was in Norman. Really not not too worried that he won't put a. They're actually basically they don't think he'll put a good defense out. No, over time it might reveal itself. So there'll be opportunities for Haener in that offense to put up points. But Caleb Williams, Travis Dye, Addison, Mario Williams, it's just that part of that side of the ball is too lethal. I don't think Fresno State has the defenders to really hold them unless they get some lucky bounces. It'll be a ball game worth watching. That, and then you can also change it over to Utah, San Diego State. Both of them going on at the same time. A lot of Pac-12, Mountain West, matchups there. Enjoy it, but I really think USC starts off sluggish in the first half and then puts it on in the second half and pulls away.
1 year ago today, or 1 year prior to this game, remember UCLA was looking really good. Upset LSU in LA. Fresno State comes to town and upsets UCLA. Can lightning strike twice? Remember, this Fresno State team was really good, folks. It was really, really good. They had some great upsets last year to upset San Diego State when they were ranked. They played, if you look at them, they played Oregon really tough last year. This is a good team. They should have beat Oregon State last weekend. I don't know. I'm not going to pick Fresno State, but I'm going to say this game's going to wind up being like 56-42.
Can only hope.
Yeah, and hopefully all those touchdowns are scored in the first 3 quarters, so all of y'all don't have to stay up till 2 a.m. Eastern time and watch this game. So
Tune to our episode, and we'll tell you everything that happened.
Yeah, this is a great game, man. I really, really think that this is going to be a remarkable game by USC and Fresno, man. All right, Fresh. We had our four. Let's go the game of the week for us. We're going to College Station and the Miami Hurricanes, right now ranked number 13 in the country. Mario Cristobal bringing the Hurricanes to face the Texas A&M Aggies, who are upsetted by Appalachian State. Oh my goodness, here, Fresh. This game we thought was going to be Miami going in at 2-0, Texas A&M going in at 2-0. Who are we going to learn more about? And now all of a sudden we're looking at this. Miami is still a 5.5-point favorite in this game. Over underline set over at 45 at this time. Tyler Van Dyke, great quarterback for Miami. Fresh, talk to me. Let's hit Hurricanes versus Aggies.
Well, I think on paper, ESPN was waiting for this to be college game day site. Two ranked teams setting it up. And then App State said, hold your phone, hold my beer. We want game day. We're going to get the upset, and then you're going to move it to Boone, North Carolina, and that's where game day is this week. Complete shocking turn of events there. I think it just sort of captivated everybody. Like, this is really happening. Like, there's no way. And I think even the players are like, nah, we're big time recruits. We'll get this done. I think App State took advantage of an opportunity when A&M was looking forward to Miami. Maybe thought they just went on town alone. Maybe they thought that App State had run out of gas because they was a 63-61 game the week before. They probably just sort of, we'll sleepwalk through it. We're one more about Miami. We're 5-star big time players. We'll be able to take care of this and get it done. And that's when you get beat. Miami, on the other hand, they kind of a slow start for Southern Miss at home week 2, and they're probably looking ahead to A&M. And then they turned it on and found a way to finish. So this is going to be an interesting week of, was the hype worth it? Where are these programs going? Both these programs have used the NIL and recruiting and have a lot of strong boosters to push these programs back to a newer level. There's a lot of high expectations. Who's going to take this game and actually show up and prove that they're worth it? And who's going to be a paper tiger, to use your reference from earlier? This past week, Jimbo said he's evaluating everything in the program. First thing I need you to start off with, you might want to start off with evaluating your yell leaders at the midnight yell and saying some of the stupid, unintelligent comments they made prior to the App State game, because that stuff's gone viral, and it's quite embarrassing to you and your program, and you're having to wear that label on top of having the loss. There's just extra items that you have to deal with right now, and it's kind of ridiculous and silly and kind of weird at the same time. Also, how about you evaluate the quarterback position? Haynes King, supposed to be the big guy, big-time recruit. He has looked like he's lost out there. Just I'm not going to get really mean, but he's lost on the football field. He doesn't know what's going on. He can't lead the offense. The offense doesn't have a flow to it. They're not getting a line. They're not snapping. They're not playing with confidence. Do you make the move to Johnson, who came the transfer from LSU? He's only there because his brother's a big-time tight end recruit that you signed. But do you go to him? At least he had game experience. He can manage the offense. He's won a few big games. And also, do you regret letting Zach Calzada leave and transfer? He's the quarterback who guided you and beat Alabama, and you kind of moved on from him, and he's sort of just wasting away there at Auburn, not playing. But maybe he's the answer that quarterback you sort of needed to help maintain and give that offense some pulse, because you're supposed to be this quarterback guru. Outside of Jameis Winston, who was an ultra-world talent, you really haven't had the quarterback production. Kellen Mond still had even his issues at A&M when he was there. He wasn't even the greatest quarterback. He's gotten cut by the Vikings. So where is this development from Jimbo? Where's this fancy offense coming from? You have all these 5-star players. It's time for you to put up, shut up. If I'm Jimbo and going into this game, I'm going to take all my veteran starters, anyone's a senior or a junior, and I'm going to say, you know what, you're not starting this week. I'm going to put all my freshmen out there, all the big-time recruits who haven't got starts, give them this chance. If you want to recruit and show these guys to stay there, put them on the field, let them play, test them, see if they're legit. Because you know what, we're in the transfer portal era. If they don't want to play or they're not getting playing time, they might leave anyway. So you might as well put them out there. You have nothing to lose. You literally have nothing to lose. Not a conference game, but your integrity of your program and all of the recruiting you've done is at stake. You need to show up on Saturday at home and take on and beat the Hurricanes. Now, from Cristobal's perspective, you've had a lot of flash and flare around your NILs and around your recruiting as well, building this program bracket up from the ashes. Is this your moment? This is better be Tyler Van Dyke's moment. Last year, he came in late. His first ever start was for NC State. Nobody really knew what to expect. he suddenly went through the weeds, led the upset of NC State, really didn't have a big time major test after that. They lost to Pitt. This is going to be the biggest road experience that he's going to have. And with the pressure on him of being a legit polished quarterback in Aggie Land, in Kyle Field, the 12th man, that whole thing, it's going to be loud. Can he get the offense focused? Can they maintain drives? Can he avoid the critical turnover and put points on the board? This is going to be a gut test, an integrity test, a soul test for both programs. Which one of these wants to rise up and dig deep with expectations and survive? It's it, if Miami loses, does that actually put them in a tailspin? Do they even find a way to recover? Yeah, it's not a conference loss, but a loss like this could really be a mindset thing. Do you use that as a springboard? If they win this, that could even send them soaring through the ACC and put them into a great spot. This is one of those launching points. A&M. If you lose this, you're 1-2 for the season, still 0-0 in the league, but is this at a downward spiral effect where you start going boom, boom, boom before you know it, you go into Tuscaloosa and that pressure is already there, and with all the talking during the offseason, you might get blown out of the entire state of Alabama, not just the stadium. This is a critical for both coaches, both programs. It's going to be a lot of fireworks. I think there's going to be a lot of mistakes early because people are going to be really jittery, and it will pick up as the ball game goes. I'm going to go ahead and say A&M finds a way to win 34-31 late. They find a way to get it done, just at home using the crowd. But Miami's going to give them everything they can. And it's going to be a very good spot for the Hurricanes moving forward, and A&M will somehow survive this football game.
Fresh, let me ask you this question. Who do I think is the worst quarterback in college football?
Graham Mertz.
Graham Mertz. Who has better stats right now, starting this season? Graham Mertz or Haynes King?
I'm going to say Graham Mertz.
Yep, Graham Mertz has better stats right now. He's thrown one less interception. I guess Haynes King has about 15 more yards passing. Both have 3 touchdowns. But you look at their quarterback rating, and Graham Mertz is over 35 points better than Haynes King. I'm not sold on Haynes King. Haynes King might be my new worst quarterback in college football very soon. This game is going to tell us a lot about him, where he's going to be. So it's going to tell us a lot about Jimbo. I'm with you on this. The midnight yell thing, I'm over it. I'm over it. I think it's not the greatest tradition because there's too many viral videos that are now starting to come out that are just showing these. And again, they're kids. We were all immature, not very intelligent college kids. We did some really goofy stuff when we were in college together fresh. Like there's a bunch of stories we could tell. But no one gave us a microphone. Like
No.
don't give these kids a microphone that are going to say something really, really dumb to make you look bad. You don't need to stop the midnight yell thing, but I'm with you on this. You really need to start picking these kids a little bit better there. I like the tradition. Tradition's great at A&M, but it's not ever to talk about, like, don't let these kids embarrass themselves, and because there's always going to be these recordings of these things. I'm with you on this, Fresh. Tyler Van Dyke had an amazing year. Came out of nowhere as a freshman last year. And believe it or not, he's playing even better this year as a sophomore. I think Cristobal really, when he was looking at that Miami job, he looked at Tyler Van Dyke and said, I can win with this kid quite a bit. The thing I'm most interested in is that we talked in our recap episode that A&M was giving up a lot of rushing yards to App State. Henry Parrish, the sophomore running back here out of Florida, 217 yards on 37 carries. Kid's averaging 5.9 yards a carry and 4 touchdowns. He was only in his last game, he was given 23 carries and got 109 yards and a touchdown. You looked at when they played Bethune, he gave 14 carries, got over 100 yards. Feed him the ball. I know it's going to be tempting. I know it's going to be really, you want to put the ball in Tyler Van Dyke's hands. I would feed Henry Parrish. I would force A&M to stop the run this year. A&M has only 4 sacks. That's unacceptable to me, especially with who you're playing. Texas A&M has not gotten the pass rush. I think that's where I'm most nervous. I think that while everyone wants to talk about the ineptitude of Texas A&M's offense, I think what I would have, if I was the coach, I would be spending all this week designing better defensive plays and better ways to get pressure to the quarterback. Every quarterback really, really hates pressure, especially pressure up the middle. I'm looking at Tyler Van Dyke, and when you're hurrying him, that's when we're going to have a little bit of problems there. He's completing almost 74% of his passes. Henry Parrish Jr. will take a lot of those problems off of Van Dyke. He's going to allow them to set up the play action a little bit and really to attack that Texas A&M defense. Because if you're able to do that and you're able to, let's say Miami goes up 10 points, you're taking, after a loss like that to App State, you're going to take all of the air out of Kyle Field. You're going to absolutely destroy that. Miami, you look at them, they've had 5 sacks themselves. They have 4 interceptions. They've also recovered 2 fumbles. They are going to force turnovers. Haynes King, you got to take care of the football. Texas A&M has got to do something different. I'm with you, Fresh. I really think, like, for some reason, I want to say that A&M rebounds in this game because there's another thought that's in my head right now. If A&M loses this game and they go into a downward spiral, which is they haven't played a single SEC game, and I would sit there and go, I don't like their chances against many teams in the SEC if they're losing these 2 games. We need to have a long, hard talk about Jimbo Fisher. And A&M needs to have a long, hard talk. 8-4 last year. You have 4 conference losses in the SEC. And then you bring in this top-tier recruiting class. You start running your mouth all offseason long, and you start the year 1-2. Unless you run the table in the West and wind up in Atlanta, that's at least 7 losses, if not more, in 2 years. That's unacceptable in a place like A&M. That's unacceptable with the money they're paying Jimbo Fisher. That's unacceptable with the amount of money that they've pumped into NIL at Texas A&M.
The funny part, he actually has a worse record in the same amount of games than Kevin Sumlin. If y'all remember Kevin Sumlin, the guy in Johnny Football there, running around like that. Jimbo has a worse record in the same amount of games to start a career at A&M. And that says a lot right there.
I don't know, man. I'm starting to think, like, is Jimbo Fisher really that great of a coach? And he does a great job recruiting. Was he just lucky, just caught, lightning in a bottle and picked up Jameis Winston at FSU and recruited the state of Florida really well? I don't know, man. I really think that this is a scary game for A&M. And you know what? I'm going to go on a limb here. I'm taking the Hurricanes. I think that they're going to have a hard time. I'm going to put it out there because I think football is better, especially college football is better when Miami is good. And we can talk about Miami and the U, and we can get all the NFL guys talking about the U. I'm going to say Miami pulls this upset. I'm going to go 28-27, 1-point win, and everyone is talking about the Hurricanes come Sunday morning.
And that would actually, I think, send more shockwaves because number one, put the U back on there, get that fan base fired up. And you're right, there are certain teams, USC, Texas being better, Miami being better. If Notre Dame is good, with them being good, it also lets all the fans who don't like those schools and want to hate on them get more energized and just adds the extra fire to the entire sport. So I can't, I think if Miami gets this one and gets this win, it will be pretty intense and put them back on the map for good.
All right, Fresh, you want to do some real quick hits before we end this here?
Let's get a couple of quick hits. Yeah.
All right, real quick here, buddy. I'm going to give you a couple of games. I'm going to give you the spread. You'll tell me who you're taking and if you're going to take the team with the points or not. We'll start. Cal traveling to Notre Dame. That's been a disaster there. Notre Dame is 10.5-point favorite.
Cal and the points.
All right, BYU going up to Eugene, Oregon. Oregon is a 3.5-point favorite.
BYU outright winner.
BYU outright winner. Wow. That's impressive right there, Fresh. All right. Kansas going to Houston. Houston, 10-point favorite.
Houston covers. I think after that overtime loss, they're going to be a little angry.
Here's a really interesting one that really intrigued me. Liberty going to Salem, North Carolina, playing Wake Forest. Wake Forest, 16.5-point favorite.
Demon Deacons cover.
Demon Deacons cover. All right. Probably the best offense in college, in the MAC, playing Ohio State. Toledo is a 32-point underdog. Ohio State cover, or do you take the Rockets?
Give me Toledo and the points.
I think even as an Ohio State fan, I still think that Toledo's got enough offense there to kind of hang with that 32 number. I did not like that 32 number. All right, sneaky good game. I think I know what you're going to say on this one, and you're going to kind of laugh that this is the spread. Nevada traveling to Iowa. Iowa is a 23-point favorite versus the Wolfpack.
I'm giving Nevada and the points.
All right, San Diego State traveling to Salt Lake City to play Utah. 21-point favorite are the Utes.
Oh, the Utes are going to cover. After last year and getting beat, they're going to cover.
All right. Georgia traveling to South Carolina. Georgia is a 24-point. Hold on. Georgia is a 24-point favorite over South Carolina on the road. On the road. That's the thing. I'm going to say that one.
Give me Carolina and the points. 24 is a lot.
24 is a lot. That's the one I was thinking about too. That's a tough one there. And I think South Carolina sometimes will hang with them a little bit more than people want. I don't think South Carolina's got a shot at that upset at all, but I would say for you, I think that they may hang around a little bit more. Well, Fresh, let's go here. Let's see if I can find one other real fun one here.
Fun fact while you're looking for that. Guess which former NFL and college football coach is returning to former site of glory this past week?
I don't know. Who's returning to glory?
Bobby Petrino returning to Arkansas, where he had his fateful or infamous motorcycle accident 10 years ago and got fired. He's returning as head coach of Missouri State, back to the scene of the crime. And, reading some of the stories and looking back, there was a lot of controversy. People didn't want him getting fired. The AD even got death threats for firing him after his affair and his motorcycle accident got revealed. So a whole bunch of controversy. He's gone through a lot in his personal life since then. But he is coming back to Fayetteville. So that's going to be an interesting scene there. That one.
All right, last one, and you know that it's going to be this. Both of these teams are 1-0. They're not giving me. I don't think that Vegas has a line on it, but the Marietta Pioneers versus the Mount Union Purple Raiders, not Red Raiders. I'm thinking Texas Tech, but Purple Raiders. I'll give you a spread of Mount Union, and we'll say Mount Union 25.5.
Purple Raiders cover.
All right. That was fun, Fresh. We got to jump into some D3 occasionally. Folks, you've been listening to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We want to send a special thank you to our producer, Drew, for putting this all together. So make sure you follow him on Twitter at DigitalDrew and make sure that you're liking and subscribing wherever you get your podcasts from, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Good Pods, any pods, Amazon pods. I know there's a bunch out there. I still don't know all of them, but I'll keep trying. Whether you're watching us on the YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Because remember, the Irrational Confidence Podcast is part of Spinnable Sports. So make sure you go to spinnablesports.com. Yep, that is spinnablesports.com. Make sure, no matter where you're at, leave us that 5-star review because Fresh and I, we're those 5-star prospects. Guys, it's going to be one heck of a week of college football. Week 3 coming down the track. I'm excited for it. Fresh is excited for it. It's going to be a good one.
Buckle up, everybody. Rest up, hydrate on Saturday, and have a good one. See y'all later. Bye.